Yay Networks.
My daughter's at school. I wonder if she's paying attention. Is she like...
She's not.
She's not.
She's been texting me.
She's texting and stuff.
You know what's funny? So she's been texting me all day. Who's picking me up? So she gets in these thought loops about
those are revs.
Who's picking me up? Who's Mom? I need to know. And it's like,
yeah.
I literally said to her, have I ever left you at school? No. Welcome to Happily Ever Amber.
Thank you.
Oh my God, that's like the perfect segue. I just like jumped right in there.
Here we are.
Thank you, Dr. Scott Lyons. And I was like, when you walked in, I was like, do I call you Dr. Scott, Dr. Lyons, Scott?
Whatever you want, Beyonce.
All right, Jay-Z. No. So you live in Puerto Rico.
I live in Puerto Rico.
How is that?
It's great. I live on the water and it's peaceful. I lived in New York for 20 years.
Oh.
And like I just was done with the rhythm and the pacing and the chaos of New York City and moved on down.
Yeah.
And it's been beautiful.
Oh my God. So you just come back to the States for like work and stuff, right?
Yeah, for work. And then LA for food.
In LA for food.
For food.
For like Mexican food, pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
it's just like the food in LA is just great.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've been really looking forward to hanging out with you and having a conversation. There's so much that I want to discuss when it comes to, your book, obviously, Addicted to Drama, which thank you so much for bringing this. I'm super excited. I want to talk about why do you feel like people get so addicted to drama? Like, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I think is interesting is that we all kind of know someone addicted to drama. I think like if I was to even describe even a few qualities, like someone who makes mountains out of molehills, kind of exaggerates, intensifies, has a disproportionate response to what's actually happening. Like we can all go, ooh, I think I know someone, or I know some drama queen. And it's so like intrinsic in us. It's visceral even. Like we have a response just thinking about that person and the effect it has on us or on their own life. And we're just like, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. Or how the hell did we go from there to there in 0 to 60? Like it's just wild.
Yeah.
And, so for me, it was like, I wanted to write something. I wanted to talk about and research what is it that creates this gap of knowledge between something we all know and the fact that no one's ever written about it. No one's ever really talked about it.
Which, by the way, is shocking.
Right?
It's shocking. Because think about like how long soap operas have been on the air, right? Like that's just,
It's inherent in our entertainment culture. Like drama, the more dramatic it is, the more eye-catching and the more entertaining it can be. Same with the news, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely. The psychology behind it is just fascinating.
Yeah. And it's been a really fun process of deconstructing what it is and getting past the sort of like the biases we might have around it. Like, when someone calls someone a drama queen, it's derogatory. Mm-hmm. They're not actually attending to the fact that that person is maybe exaggerating, intensifying, overwhelming themselves unnecessarily as a means to escape their own trauma and pain. And so it's this gap of knowledge and empathy and compassion because it's so overwhelming to be involved in someone else's drama. Mm-hmm. They're gossiping, they're venting, whatever it is that just kind of consumes you energetically to the point of going, oh my gosh, this is their only way that they figured out of how to survive. So, drama is this like unnecessary turmoil and chaos. It's like, it's a exaggeration, it's an intensification of behaviors and emotions and words and feelings and all of and stories. And it's really disproportionate. Like I might pick up this water and it's, 2 or 3 pounds. I don't actually know. I'm not great with pounds. But if I like pull it up really fast as though it was like 20 pounds, it's like, it doesn't make sense the way that I'm behaving in relation to what's here. Mm-hmm. So there's a disproportionate amount of focus and energy to what's actually here in our response or our reaction to it.
Mm-hmm. And you know, that's really interesting. Like as you're saying this, I'm thinking of
who do you know?
Well, there's not enough hours in the day to go through the list of people I know to talk about them. But what brings me to the thought that comes to mind is toddlers.
Yeah.
Because
the tantrums.
Oh my gosh. So like if you start back from, you know, childbirth into like how these little amoebas, creatures, little drunk people run around this world. It's fascinating because it's like, did you really need to cry over like someone taking your toy?
Literally
like,
spilled milk.
Yeah.
It's, you know, catastrophe. Everything is a catastrophe. And, you know, there's a lot of physiological and biological reasons for that exaggeration then, but it's such a good point. You know, like we see it and we go, that infant, we maybe have some compassion, even though it's fucking overwhelming to be around, especially a toddler. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bless, I worked in pediatrics, I know. But yeah, when it's like when it becomes the adult toddler, so to speak, when they're just like, why were they in line at the grocery store and someone maybe cut them off, or the grocery attendant had to like close it to go to the bathroom and they freaked the fuck out. Like it's so disproportionate. Or, you know, they were talking with their partner and they misinterpreted something or the tone, and they're like, I'm going to break up with you. You know, just like
or road rage. That's another one. Being in LA, it's like people, you know, obviously I'm not going to like deny it. Like sometimes I get triggered, but then you're like, who cares? That person wants to get in, and clearly it's like I'm not in a rush, and you're just, you know, it's a very interesting, like our nervous systems, to me, doing a lot of my own inner healing and work right now for the first time.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a big fucking deal.
It is. It is.
I assume we can swear on your podcast.
Yeah. I have to like tone it down because my mom was like, you cuss too much. And I was like, but that's just part of like
it's part of your vernacular. It's part of
it's my drama. By the way, I think about being an actor, and both of my sisters have their masters in engineering, and they just are completely like, we're so different. And then here I am, an actor, an artist, a performer. Yeah. And I'm just curious, like, why it's how some siblings are more dramatic, right? Like, as an actor, are we more addicted to the drama?
Oh, and that's
we are. Okay, please talk about this.
Period.
Please,
I mean, you know,
stop.
Well, you know, I was an actor and an artist, and I left the arts because I was like, I remember hanging out with my friends after shows, and all we would do is talk about how we messed up. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like that line we missed, or if we like that pirouette we didn't quite get, or whatever it was. And it was just like, I remember sitting there and going, why aren't we talking about the good stuff? Why aren't we marinating in the richness of our experience and the experience of the audience? Why are we talking about constantly like the stressors? Yeah. And like, what are we getting from that? And I mean, fuck, I was working with such big artists as a director and a choreographer too. And I was like, this doesn't ever go away. And this isn't sustainable. And I didn't know at the time how to step back from the sort of constant stressors. I mean, you know, doing anything in front of a live audience is going to be activating. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or even in front of a camera, it's going to be activating. And the things, all the possibilities of things going wrong, it's exciting. You know, and when you're living for that type of excitement, are you really living? Like, are we able to fully get everything that in life that isn't at that decibel of excitement? And if we're only living for that heightened decibel of sensation, are we really living? That was the question I had. And my answer was, I don't think so for me.
Yeah. It's tough being an artist, and it doesn't matter. You could, be a plastic surgeon, because to me, that's like a form of art. Like your bar, your baseline keeps getting like brought up. And I think that's, not worrying about the past, not projecting onto the future. Yeah. And just living in the present moment. I feel like that's really for me anyway, I don't want to speak to all artists, but sometimes that's really, it's the hardest thing that we have to do, but it's what we have to do in our job. Like just being in the moment. And even when I'm auditioning now, or I go on set, I end up feeling more at peace. And it's because I'm having to be fully present in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, certainly as part of an addiction drama, we are living our past as though it was the present, or we're projecting into the future as though it was the present. And both of those either have a lot of trauma, or we're projecting even like fights that we might have in the future, or ways that we're going to have to keep our survival strategies going. And so, it's absolutely, I mean, there's a real distinction for those of us who are caught in this dependency on crisis and chaos to not really be in the present, because being in the present means that we're going to have to attend to what's actually here in ourselves. And often, like I said, we're chasing the drama to avoid our trauma. It's too vulnerable. We might be consumed by the pains to which we never metabolized.
So speaking of drama, reality shows, let's talk about that for a second, because I find it so fascinating. Do you think the people that have turned reality into like this huge, part of our entertainment business, do you think those people suffer from a lot of trauma, the viewership?
It's interesting because in the last, I think it was since 2013, the amount of reality television shows is astronomical. It's like 60 or 70% of our content. And it deviates depending on the year and so forth. And it's like, what is it that draws us into other people's drama? Because a lot of these reality shows are not about like happy-go-lucky. I think the British Bake Off is the only show that I'm
and Love on the Spectrum. I was actually just talking to the girls before this, and I was like, I want to create a reality show that's like a positive... see, the word reality is associated with drama, right?
Yes.
But you don't think of like the only show, I mean, I'm sure there's other ones. I don't watch a ton of reality show because the kids are here a lot, but it's Love on the Spectrum, which I love.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Down for Love. And there's a couple other ones.
Are there?
I don't remember. Kelsey, do you remember which ones we were talking about?
Love on the Spectrum.
These are shows that are like positive.
Oh, Golden Bachelor.
Oh, Golden Bachelor. That's right. You were talking about. Okay.
There's less drama on the Golden Bachelor.
I mean, I didn't watch it, but I imagine so. It's more people are like,
it's happy.
People are matured out of the drama.
Yeah, but sorry. So I took us down like this weird path. But
well, it's interesting because I was on reality shows. None of them got aired, thank goodness. And all of them were like these, like, it was a ghost hunting show, and they would make us refilm it and like exaggerate ourselves and intensify what we saw and like the feelings there. And I was like, but there's nothing reality about this.
But now you're acting.
But now we're acting.
Right.
And, I have other friends that I've talked to who are even on The Bachelorette. And for them, there was certainly drama there, but the producers never asked them to exaggerate it. So like I was assuming always that reality shows were very like intended and producers asked them to exaggerate it. Mm-hmm. I mean, because that was my experience, but the challenge is certainly if what we perceive as reality is these heightened states, then that becomes our baseline operating of what's modeled as living.
And you're like, oh my God, my life is boring. Like, I have no drama in my life.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we feel less. I mean, the thing about drama is when we're because drama is like an addiction to stress. Mm-hmm. It's the physiological state of drama is stress. And so we feel more energy. We feel more pain relief. We feel more empowered in these states of stress. Now, typically we think like, no, stress is overwhelming. That's when we're totally flooded. But before we get to that state of being flooded by stress, we literally get more energy. We feel
it's a survival thing.
It's a survival strategy.
Biological survival thing. Yeah. We're originally wired for lions and
tigers and bears.
And and other humans like chasing us down with like bows and arrows.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I don't know about you, but like when I'm in the height of something and it's like before the flooding, like the flooding is when you're like just so overwhelmed you can't even see straight. Mm-hmm. But before that, like, you know, you're in like, I used to thrive in emergency situations. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, oh my gosh, yes, I had some skill sets for it, but I was like, I feel empowered. Mm. And I have a lot of friends who work in like emergency medicine who talk about the same thing.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And they're like, yes, I am addicted to drama because I leave the emergency room and I feel bored in life and I feel disempowered. And I look for potential places where an emergency could happen to feel that sort of hit of life again.
Oh my gosh, that's so fascinating. So lately, so something that I've been doing is trying to disconnect this like voice, this like ongoing loop of like negative self-talk and get back into my body.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you talk about, somatic healing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't even know what that was. So can you explain to me and everyone else what the heck that is?
Yeah. So before I even talk about that, do you find that when you get out of the negative thoughts, like what happens?
Oh, I feel like I'm like a floating butterfly.
You feel good.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And how long does that last for?
Oh, not that long. Until I hear the word mom, or I hear a ding, and that's my phone, and I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. So it's interesting because those who have an addiction to drama, they'll get out of like the thought loop, the negative thought loop, and they'll move towards something good. And there's there's a reflex called the activation reflex that brings them back to some type of stress level. So they might start thinking negatively again. Mm-hmm. They might seek or look for where there's drama. They might turn on the news. They might scroll through the internet, anything that kind of takes them away from settling into themselves. So that's why I asked, because sometimes our own thought loops, negative thought loops, are the strategy to rev ourselves out of ourselves. And so, and we're talking about somatics, is somatics, or soma means body, and somatics means the living body, meaning that we have sensation and feelings that arise from our body. It's not like we have this body that just holds our brain. So in fact, most of the sensations and feelings we have, about 80% of them, 90% of them, come from the body and are registered in the brain. So they happen down here. And when we talk about habits or reflexes, they happen in what's called the implicit. So in the subconscious or in the body. And in trauma too, what happens is sensation, like boom, I'm scared or terrified, right? It gets separated from memory. And so the fear lives in our body on like a feedback loop. And it's waiting to be connected to the floating memory that's been separated. And so somatics, as a strategy for trauma healing, is about reconnecting that which has been fragmented. So it's like, okay, I got into this car accident and I had this tear and I went, and that sort of breath holding fear of like, I might die stays in my body. It keeps looping. The body keeps the score. The body keeps the memory of that. But there's a separation of it. And that separation is the like details of the memory that can help hold it to process it. And somatics, so when we talk about thought loops or saying that, sometimes those are thought viruses or other inner critics that are either we've internalized from like a parent, or we've internalized from media or something like that. And it is looping because it hasn't been connected with the actual sensations and feelings in the body.
So where do I go right now to go heal myself? So what kind of therapy like entails? Is the therapy called?
Yeah, it's somatic therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I have this thought loop in my head and it's like causing this physiological response. But I might go, okay, so one of the things I notice is the thoughts keep me away from actually feeling myself. So I might go, okay, so we are in these fun pink chairs and I might just first notice the color. So I'm coming back to this moment as opposed to the thought virus, which is years and years old. that's just playing itself out, looping like a record.
I love that word, thought virus.
Yeah.
It gives me like hope that it could heal, like you could heal it. So one of the things that I do with London, my oldest who has panic disorder, or I like to use the word she's healing from panic disorder because I don't want her to think it's like, always going to be attached to her, is doing the 5-4-3. Yeah. And that, which for those of you who don't know, it's like 5 things you see, 4 things. Yeah. So I thought about that because that really brings you back into the present moment. It gets you out of here. And even though it's like, you're back into the present moment, seeing 5 things, 4 things you can touch.
Yeah. So it brings you into what's called exteroreception, which is like our moment-to-moment sensory connection. And then we have things like proprioception, which is like, so now we're just going to, move our body side to side and feel a sense of weight. So it's like, so I'm feeling the chair underneath me and the chair part behind me, and I'm going to push into the chair. Oh yeah, there's the chair that I was actually like tensing away from the support. So I'm going to like just maybe even exaggerate that tension or holding. And then I'm going to release that tension and feel the chair supporting me. And then I'm going to keep going in my mind or in my process. Where can I say yes to the chair supporting me? Where can I say yes to being received by that chair? Oh, and then all of a sudden my weight drops a little bit. What about, did that drop for you?
Yeah.
Now,
feeling connected again.
Yeah.
Grounded.
And now see if you can go into one of those thought viruses and keep that connection.
No, it's impossible.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
So it's, in this sense, we're starting to interrupt the thought virus, the reflexive, like I'm shit, or life is so tough, or my focus on the negative, or whatever it is that keeps me actually outside of my body, outside of my feelings, outside of the things that haven't been processed. Because we all find our own strategies to protect ourselves from being overwhelmed by the things that we never got supported by or processed. So we are just very creative, and I call that different forms of revving, whether I focus on things in my mind, like, oh my gosh, I didn't wash my hands before I ate. Am I going to get sick? Or, oh my gosh, my daughter's at school. I wonder if she's paying attention. Is she like...
She's not.
She's not.
She's been texting me.
She's texting and stuff.
You know what's funny? So she's been texting me all day. Who's picking me up? So she gets in these thought loops about...
Those are revs.
Who's picking me up? Who's... Mom, I need to... And it's like...
Yeah.
Have I ever... I literally said to her, have I ever left you at school? No. Has anyone ever not picked you up?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Have you always slept in a bed after school at night? Yes. Then you're good. It's either going to be me or someone else. That's it.
And this is the difference between more of a cognitive approach, which is like, I'm going to give you information as though the anxiety was rational to begin with. Often anxiety is like an alarm system in the body for saying, hey, something hasn't been attended to. Like either a deep-seated fear or a inability to be with some feelings or sensations or whatever it is. And so those, again, like the, hey, who's going to pick me up, is more the question is like, what's happening for you right now? Oh, I'm just like worried no one's going to pick me up. And I might go, cool, where do you feel that in your body? That must feel really intense. I feel it in my chest, like my chest is closing in on me. Okay, I hear that. And can you also feel like where your body's resting against the chair? Can we feel both and go back and forth? And it's like all of a sudden there's some release in the chest. And then we start getting like, that's the pattern right there, right? And we have to interrupt the pattern to then go, what's underneath that keeps the revving?
So it's the repetition of that will ultimately rewire your brain.
It's the repetition of interrupting that gives us the space to go into what the deeper core issues are. And then once we've taken out the fuel from the pattern, we no longer have that, like, we have the habit of the pattern, but we don't have the sort of like belief that this is real.
Like initially like at a 10, but now it's at like a 5 or a 4.
Yes, it's going to decrease. And it's like, that she'll get to that point, for example, where she's texting you and it's like, is someone going to pick me up? And a part of her is going, I realize that this is like, I'm not actually anxious right now. I'm just used to doing that. And that's a big break in sort of that strategy, which we call an addiction drama. It doesn't sound kind per se,
right?
But it is the physiological process to which we are vacating our own sensations and feelings and using all these strategies to do it.
That's so interesting. So one of the things that I also love to do is like a cold shower if I'm really anxious or I have looping thoughts.
Yeah.
I'll put myself in a really cold shower or I can't
like an ice bath or like.
Well, I mean, I haven't gone that crazy. I've been thinking about getting one outside, but I don't love cold water.
Yeah, I don't either.
And it's really hard. So like at the end of my showers, I tell my kids like, okay, if you hear me scream, just know that I'm okay, that I'm just turning on the cold water. I'm just like trying to like give myself a little bit of a ice shower. But yeah, that's another tool that I think has been super helpful.
Yeah. Well, cold water, ice baths, stuff like that. The intention is that it increases our capacity for stress. So it's stress tolerance is the term. And so like, so more stimulus is coming at us. We actually have a bigger bandwidth to not just react or have a reflexive response to it. And that's part of the intention here too, is because it's like, if I see something so small, like I don't have my water glass isn't full and I go, oh my God, what if I don't have enough water for this episode? And it's like, that's an addiction to drama because I'm not actually going underneath to going, you know what, I'm feeling kind of nervous about being in front of a camera. And so all of these are just different ways in which, again, I'm being out of touch with myself, which for many, many reasons was the survival strategy probably growing up.
So what made you want to get into this field? I'm so curious.
Of psychology?
Yeah.
I was pretty fucked up and I was curious why.
I find that's amazing. I think you're the only psychiatrist or doctor I've ever known. Yeah, I was fucked up. And I appreciate that.
No, it's true.
And I do.
Yeah. I mean, look, my own personal survival strategy of avoiding myself was attending to other people. The more I could attend to other people, the more I could justify ignoring myself. And
is that codependency?
Yeah, it can be. Absolutely. Yeah. And
people pleasing.
People pleasing. And it worked. I mean, I was rewarded for it. I got diplomas and I got written up in papers and I got very fancy patients and like all the things that like, one might feel as accolades that say, yes, you're doing good. But really it was, yes, let's reinforce this fucking pattern of avoiding yourself. I didn't figure it out till yesterday. So, I'm doing all right.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This is just amazing here. I'm going to show the camera so everyone can see it. And for people who want to find you on social media, can you just give your...
Yeah.
What do you call them? Credentials? No, I don't know.
The handle. The @ sign. It's Dr. Scott Lyons. So DrScottLyons. That's my website and all my socials. And and
go buy the book, by the way.
Buy the book, Addicted to Drama.
I'll link everything for you guys. This is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yay Networks.